Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Within Warzone right now, we're obviously all going through trying to optimize our loadouts, build the absolute best setup so you can have the most success in game, right? Pretty straightforward. There are, however, a lot of very simple, very straightforward mistakes you could be making that are actually limiting your overall experience, limiting the potential of your setups. And today, I want to point out a couple of those pretty major mistakes and talk about how to avoid them, what to look out for in general, so that you can have the best loadout possible for your gameplay and obviously find the most success in game. So that said, first up here, we'll actually switch over to this face cam so we can see attachments a little bit better. I want to talk about some range-based options here, because on a standard weapon, like for instance, my example is the GPR, but this would apply to most rifles, most LMGs, really anything for the mid to long range. You're going to have some options for a fifth and final attachment. Typically, a standard setup here is going to include an optic of your choice, usually a suppressor, sometimes maybe a compensator, but we like to stay off the radar when we can. An extended mag of some sort, maybe an underbarrel for more aggressive options. It could be the Ranger. For more just standard options, probably going to be the vertical option. You might have a stock instead of an underbarrel. You might have a rear grip instead of something here, but typically one of your attachments is going to come down, especially if you're not using gunfighter, between a barrel and maybe a fire mod. And some people are probably going to like recoil springs, just free control there. That's fantastic. That's not really something any barrel is going to be offering here. These are typically based around velocity, range, some of both, or maybe a little bit of movement there. So control recoil springs by itself is fine, but what about velocity? This is actually something that obviously is super important for all weapons, snipers especially, but then even your full auto weapons like your rifles, LMGs, even some marksmans here and there it could be great for. And maxing out velocity here, you could go a couple of different routes. Something like reinforced is going to offer about 20%, and actually if you were to go through your advanced stats and look at some of the fire mods, overpressured ammo is also going to add in about 20% velocity there. So you might look at that and say, okay, there's not really a big difference. It won't matter if I were to run overpressured or if I were to run the reinforced barrel, because I'd get some range out of that as well. But if your weapon doesn't need range and you were to look at this and say, okay, all I care about is velocity, so I could look at something like overpressured ammo. This is just going to give me straight up velocity, right? 20% is pretty good. Well, there's really no reason to use that overpressured or velocity increasing ammo mod when the gain twist barrel exists on everything and it offers 40% velo there. You're basically getting double out of it with the same general layout. Just simply a velocity increase, nothing else being factored in. Gain twist wins 10 times out of 10 times. So if you're looking at a loadout and you're like, okay, I don't have a great velocity here, maybe I want to use something like overpressured, well, you can absolutely switch this out and just be more optimized and be more efficient in that stat in specific. Now, there will be cases where maybe you already have a barrel on here that you really like to use, like reinforced is super important to you because you like that extra damage range and a little bit of velocity, but you're still looking for something more. Then you absolutely could stack on top with the overpressured ammo or something like that and get even more and double up on that. But if you're just simply looking for the one-to-one here, gain twist is absolutely a better alternative every time. Another big thing with your setups here that could just make your life a lot easier, that I see a lot of people sort of just skipping, I guess, is not going into this customization tab and looking at their reticles. Now with this, there are a lot of options here. As you are using any scope in the game, whether it is a 2x, a 3x, a red dot, whatever the case is, the more you use it, the more you get kills with it, the different reticles you unlock. So you might start off with just like a random, T-pose, for instance, or almost a T-pose like crosshair, but then as you go through and you use the weapon more and more, you get one with a center red dot, you get one with a little crosshair. You might really like that. There's one that's got a little circle outline with a blue dot as the center. You might really enjoy that. Simply changing these up could be a big difference in game. Players back in the day, they'd use a VOK 3x scope, but it's like, man, the red dot, it's just not the best looking one. I'm way more accurate with a T-pose reticle instead. So there's actually some solid alternatives, like for instance, on the 2 and on the 3x scopes. If you go through and play zombies, you can actually end up getting this classic sort of optic and reticle here that's essentially a replica of the T-pose from Modern Warfare 2019 and Warzone 1. If you like a different color, for instance, like in Warzone, you really want the blue crosshair, you can just go through, get 150 kills with this, you end up unlocking that. So rather than just, you know, basically putting on an optic and saying, okay, that's my 2 times, I just got to live with it, you can add this layer of customization and actually see some drastic changes in your accuracy simply because the scope is easier to see enemies with, it's easier to stay on target. Changing this up, not everyone's gonna like the same thing. Like I said, you might really love, you know, the triangle crosshair here, you might really love the crosshair that's got the plus in it, you might really like the circle outline. Whatever you find yourself to be the most accurate with from any color scheme or any setup here, change that on your optic and it can make a big difference in terms of the gunfights you're winning and losing. It might seem like a small thing, but truly that personalization there to make yourself more comfortable goes a long way. And by the way, as we are going through all the various loadout issues and mistakes you might want to look out for here, if you find the video helpful or if you simply enjoy it, a like rating is always really appreciated. Really does help grow the channel. Seriously, much love to everyone who does take the time to do so. And if you're new here or if you're a part of that 59% of viewers who are not already subscribed, every single day I got you covered with news, updates, patch notes, meta breakdowns. It's all right here, so feel free to hit that subscribe button and join us on the road to 1 million. Still trying our best to hit that before the end of the year. Would absolutely love to see if we can make that happen. Now, another thing you might want to look out for is just a slight misconception with how certain attachments work. As you may recall, with the launch of season 1 and the whole overhaul that we got to attachments for MW2 and MW3 guns, they basically went through and said, okay, now for muzzles and underbarrels, everything's going to do the same stuff. So all hand stops and mobility based attachments like that for underbarrels are going to do the same thing for ADS and Sprintifire. All vertical underbarrels like pineapple grips or the Tango or whatever, those are all going to do the same thing for control. So they're basically copy and paste. The only difference is their looks. They also said they were doing the same thing for muzzles. However, that's not necessarily the case. A lot of the compensators end up doing the same thing in terms of the control percentages they offer, but suppressors, there's actually a few exceptions here. So for instance, Quartermaster Suppressor still is focused on control here. So it's not going to give you any better range or velocity, but it does a decent bit for your control. However, it does end up hurting your ADS and your Sprintifire a noticeable bit. If you were to go through and go all the way down to the remainder of the suppressors though, you might notice as you're going through, they're pretty much all doing the same thing, right? They're going to help out with range and velocity. So opposed to a compensator where the STG has 38 meters of effective damage range, you change the suppressors, it's all 41 and you get some better velo, a 14% increase there. However, there is one suppressor that for whatever reason is different, and that's the Spirit Fire. You actually get 43 meters here, so a little bit of extra range, but it hurts your Sprintifire some. So not every suppressor is actually the exact same, and this applies to all weapon types. So if you're using this on an SMG, if you're using this on a sniper, for instance, the Spirit Fire equivalents basically are doing a little bit more for a slightly harsher con in the form of Sprintifire. So an interesting change there. It says it's doing the same stuff in terms of the pros and cons list here. So not sure if that's an oversight, if that'll get updated, or if that's intended, but for now, as long as, you know, this video has this section in it and I don't edit it out before I post it, that is something to look out for. Hey everyone, quick little announcement. Right now, Gamer Advantage is doing their best sale of the year. Of course, you guys always see me rocking my Gamer Advantage frames. The new Horizon 2.0 frames are my brand new favorites, upgrading from the original Horizons, which of course, you always saw me wearing in the videos. But right now, for Black Friday and Cyber Monday, Gamer Advantage is running a ton of deals. Almost everything on the site has some kind of discount applied to it. Plus, if you use code Immortal at checkout, that stacks on top of the holiday discounts as well, so you can save even more money. So now is the best time possible to go through, grab yourself a pair of GA frames. They got different frames and colorways to fit your style, prescription and regular lenses, quite literally something for everyone. The link will be down in the description below if you're interested. Also, we were just talking about that briefly there, but this pros versus cons section here, we've talked about this quite a bit already. It's best not to solely go off of this. While this does give you usually an accurate breakdown, what's important here is the advanced stats. So you just toggle right bumper when you're in the attachment menu here, whatever your keybind is in the bottom right there. The advanced stats page, through all of the testing that we've seen so far, True Game Data has talked about this as well. The advanced stats here are what are truly accurate. This is what you want to go off of. So as you're going through a loadout here, for instance, like if we were to switch over to the Jackal, if this says for the suppressor, all it's doing is the minimap firing ping, and if you were to take it off, off and not see anything going on in the stats section, then yes, that's what's truly happening there. Same deal with the reinforced barrel, for instance. In terms of it adding velocity and damage range, it's all it says for the pros, and you can double check and see, yes, the velocity is there, yes, the damage range is different for that. So you absolutely want to go off of the advanced stats page. Keep in mind, if you do have something like let's say a hand stop equipped and it shows you your stats with this, if you were to go through and keep the advanced stats pulled up and then change over to this, it's going to actually show you the difference in stats with your ADS speed and your sprint to fire versus having that hand stop equipped. So you might look at this and say, okay, the pineapple doesn't say it hurts my mobility at all, and then you look at the advanced stats and it shows an 11% increase and a 9% increase. That's just the difference in the attachments. For whatever reason, that's how they decided to go about it this year. But trust the advanced stats, don't always trust the pros and cons. There's a lot of weapons where those are just objectively wrong or not fully accurate. Another thing you got to look out for that's not necessarily applying directly to your class setup, but just with your general loadout, is the firing range. And unfortunately, this is not a new issue. The firing range can be super useful for things like testing out recoil control. You can actually go through here and actually toggle this metal plate so you can test your recoil and see what things are like. That's great for this. The firing range is great for warming up and, getting shots on an enemy. If hard to move the plate out of the way, getting shots on an enemy, warming up, testing out how accurate you're going to be on an actual player model. Unfortunately, what's not always accurate here is the damage. We even have a damage stat in the top left showing there, but if you were to go through and test certain things, for instance, my Car 98K, I know for a fact in live gameplay, this will one-shot headshot in its first damage range, which is about 70 meters. Yet, if I were to test my one-shot headshot on this first dummy, it says it's a hit marker, which is entirely inaccurate. And snipers in particular, for some reason, have always had this issue in the firing range where their damage is not correctly translated onto these dummies. This is something that absolutely needs to be fixed here because it is misleading a lot of players. I see comments all the time. Zach, you mentioned that the car was a one-shot. You mentioned that the Victus was a one-shot, or the LR762 was a one-shot, but I tested in the firing range and I got a hit marker. Well, it's because the firing range is wrong. In game, if you were to test in its max damage range, it'd be a one-shot headshot, so they've got to update this. This was an issue in MW3, in MW2. Since the firing range was added in, snipers just have not been accurate here, so don't always go off the damage stats in the firing range. They're not great for whatever reason. And then the last thing I want to mention is just more so a PSA, because I also see a lot of concern, a lot of questions about this. If you were to use the gunfighter wildcard on your setup, obviously this is going to allow you to use 8 attachments on your Black Ops 6 weapons. However, I see a lot of people saying, hey, why can't I use an MW2 or an MW3 weapon? And showing as locked, it says I need to buy something to use it. What's going on? I thought it was free. I thought I had it unlocked. Well, currently, for whatever reason, there's a bug going on where if you have gunfighter, it shows those messages. So for instance, if I were to switch over to, let's say, an STG here, it's going to show this error. It says I need to permanently unlock by purchasing a bundle, and it won't let me equip this on my loadout. Same deal with an MW2 gun, and the reason behind this is gunfighter. Because this is only available on Black Ops 6 guns, for whatever reason, you're just not even allowed to put an MW2 or an MW3 weapon on your class if you have gunfighter equipped. So if I were to switch over to overkill, obviously I lose my attachments on the XM4, but now I can go through and I can toggle over to my STG and I'm all good to go, and I can customize this with my 5 attachments. So I've seen a lot of questions, like I said, and even now if you have an MW3 weapon equipped, it won't let you select gunfighter. So there's just an incompatibility there. They did mention they only wanted gunfighter for BO6 guns, so it does make it a little bit confusing in game in terms of why it's showing as you need to permanently unlock it. I don't know why that message shows up. It should just say, hey, you've got gunfighter on, it's not equipable, you need to change that, and then you're all good to go. So the messaging there certainly needs updated. But that being said, those are a handful of mistakes though that you might be making with your gunsmith, with your loadouts here in BO6 Warzone, and a few ways to counter those or get around that stuff. Hopefully this video helps you out, helps inform you a little bit. If it did, a like rating would be seriously appreciated, and if you're new here, feel free to hit that subscribe button on your way out to guarantee you're always up to date with everything going on in COD. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.